Quest for Education. Raising the Bar for Philippine Education by Mr. Miguelito S. Reswara. Summary of presentation. Assumptions on effective educational system. Education as it is understood. Two types of education. The educational timeline. The educational context. The need for a cultural platform. When education fails. Raising the bar of education. Implementing informal education as a new norm. Laying the assumptions. Education is not bounded by space and time. It happens within the human system. Whenever there is an upliftment either in the body, mind, and spirit, education happens. Education is therefore built within a culture. What the Filipinos should do is strengthen the culture and everything else follows. Education is all about cultural development. Terms to comprehend. Education, from the Latin word educator, which means to raise. Therefore, uplifting or raising up is the ultimate goal of education. And when this does not happen, education fails. Two classification of education. Formal and informal education.
In a formal education, the design is structural, it is comprehensive, and oftentimes it is traditional. While the timetable is periodic, the cost is allocated, the implementation is somewhat easy, but the results are oftentimes ineffective. In an informal education, it is outcomes based, it is need oriented, while the timetable is timeless, the cost is clean, the implementation is somewhat complex, but it is effective.
Educational timeline. Three major breakthroughs. Number 1. In the good old days. Number 2. The rising of civilizations. Number 3. The modern era. In the good old days, education is informal. Intuitively it exists for man to survive. Introduction to formal education. Breaking the wilderness. Man breaks the wilderness for human to dominate. Instincts in the wilderness still exist in the human spirit. While we build the world for humans, we create a world of divisiveness. Constituting laws and order is primordial concern. Formal education becomes the norm to establish order. Formal education, age of colonization, building territories. Education built to put up colonies, advocated terrestrial science. Education of circumnavigation, land, sea, air, and the galaxies. Establishing structure of governance and control. Education built on type of responsive governance. Religion, a new age of humanitarian civilization. Education that promotes dignity to the humankind. Hybrid education, age of industrialization, advancement of mathematics and science. Education that laid learning theories that establish norms. Machineries built to replace human labor. Education built to enhance productivity. Resolution on the conflict of science and religion. Education built to resolve conflicts. Hybrid education, age of liberalization, empowerment of races. Education that empowers human coexistence. Displacement of discrimination among races. Education claiming gender equality and physiological inability. Environmental concern. Education of balance ecology. Modern education, the idealist contemplation. Education 4.0, education that promotes or embraces collaboration, connection, and ecological preservation despite racial differences. Education becomes informal with the presence of the terahertz technology, iconic representations using adaptive technology. 5G technology, education of miniaturization, nanotechnology, bioscience, and light-speed technology. Education in context. Old, informal. Age of civilization, formal to hybrid. Age of modernization, informal. Purpose of a national cultural platform. To raise the bar of human existence in gaining stability in its treasury. To strengthen the Filipino generation in attaining balanced ecosystem where there is opportunity for all, wise use of resources, respect to biodiversities and advancement of new techniques for the populace to enjoy life. To grasp the meaning of the existence of life and its geographical presence conducive to good living conditions. Percentage of Filipino family time and resources wasted for a misconstrued education. 80% of the resources is poured in educating the young. 80% of the Philippines' national budget is focused on human educational development. Up to 70% of human existence spent on unproductivity. If man dies at 70, the ratio will be 20:70. This is almost 1/3 lost just sending our children to school. And when we take away the resting hours on human average, this is 8/24 hours. Again another 1/3 loss. Reasons on cost inefficiency of education in the Philippines, built to control our economy. It is heading towards its patriarch decision. It was not built for our Filipino culture advancement. Need assessment was not established. How do we raise the bar of education? Eradicate myth. Promote and strengthen cultural identity using the informal type. Implement informal type of education, need-based, outcome-based, lean, integrative, cost-effective. How do we address informal type of education's complexity? Review on human cognitive assessment strategy. Review on national directorate and policy. Account of internal resources. Labor capital. Environmental resources. Value-added strategy. Liquidity of assets. Labor market development. Educational platform should be a cultural platform. Cultural platform should be an educational platform. Informal education is the new norm. It costs less. It is culture-oriented. It is effective. It helps nation to rise above adversaries. Informal education is the new norm. It costs less. It is culture-oriented. It is effective. It helps nation to rise above adversaries. Informal education is the new norm. It costs less. It is culture-oriented. It is effective.